Round Tahirih. Hun en stor forfatter, stor internasjonal forfatter, har vunnet priser, og vi altså så heldige at hun skal innlede nå med Shoghi Effendis skrifter. Og vi skal gå i detalj inn på de skriftene, både i hovedforedraget og i gruppearbeidene som vi skal ha senere. Så det en ære, en glede, an honor to wish you most welcome, Bahiyyih Nakhjavani.
Work Allahu Akbar. Woo! Allahu Akbar. I am so honored to be with you, but I feel so far away from you. This is not good. I should come down and just hug you all. It's just such a great privilege to be with you. I have been trying to come to Norway many times. Should I be here? It's not good? The sound is not good? It's good? Really? Can you understand my stupid English? I will try to speak clearly and slowly because nothing, no language is as beautiful as your Norwegian. I have been listening to these prayers. I was overwhelmed by the beauty of your language. And I said, what am I doing here speaking English? I should learn Norwegian, really. Is there a problem? There? Is that better? Is that better? No, it's okay. It's too much trouble. It's okay. Do you want to come closer to me so I can see your faces? I don't want to bother you if you don't. It's such a huge room. This gives me a chance. Is the sound better now? Can you hear me clearly? Is the sound better? Oh, that's nice. That's better. Yeah. Please excuse me for causing trouble like this. Translations of Shoghi Effendi, the writing of Shoghi Effendi in English. But I hope that everything I say will go into your ears and be translated in your head and become Norwegian. So it goes into your heart. The purpose of these sessions will be really to be learning how to read Shoghi Effendi. And why do we need to learn how to read Shoghi Effendi's words? Well, first of all, you know very well that his sentences are very, very long, right? You begin, you go, where am I going? You get lost, right? So one good reason is we need not to get lost when we read his words. But there's a deeper reason. There's a deeper reason. In 1931, after the First World War, just at a time with the beginning, if you think of 1931, what was happening? There was so much unrest, so much boiling up anger in Europe. We were beginning to see that the war was not over. There was going to be more trouble. There was already unrest. There was the depression. And we could see ourselves that there was going to be trouble. Shoghi Effendi wrote a letter which is now in the compilation of the World Order of Baha'u'llah. He wrote this on the 28th of November. And in this letter, he said something very profound. He talks about the problems in the world today. And so I thought it would be helpful, because now for the first time we are gathered together, for the first time after the pandemic. What a time for the Baha'is to be gathered together, that we are coinciding with something else that is also happening. Just before I came, there was a terrible attentat here in Oslo. Shocking. I didn't even know about it until I stepped into the arms of dear Brit and Lasse. They said, "We thought that the immigration people caught you because you're Persian." But it was terrible to arrive in Oslo just when this crisis, this catastrophe happened. Simultaneously, we know that at this very moment, we have a terrible war going on right here in Europe, with armaments massing on the frontiers, with the concern that what is happening right now in Ukraine can go everywhere. We already have environmental crises that we know are going to be everywhere. We already know that the problems in the Ukraine will lead possibly to famine. Famine in Africa, particularly. Poor Africa, where even now as we are sitting here, how many hundreds of children neither can get a good meal nor have any education, while we sit in comfort here. So while we are here, imagine what is happening in the world around us. And especially with the G7, we've got all these powerful leaders getting together at the same time as we little Baha'is are gathered for the first time since the pandemic to read the words of Shoghi Effendi. And I will now read to you what he said on November the 28th, 1931, in that context, as we think of our context. He said, "Are not," this is not in your book, I will tell you why in a minute, "are not these intermittent crises that convulse present-day society due primarily to the lamentable inability of the world's recognized leaders," now listen to this, "to read aright the signs of the times." We are in a crisis because our world leaders are unable to read aright the signs of the times, to rid themselves once for all of their preconceived ideas and fettering creeds, fettering means imprison, and reshape the machinery of their respective governments according to the standards implicit in Baha'u'llah's supreme declaration of the oneness of mankind. That's it. That is the point. To be able to read aright the signs of the times in order that we get rid of our old prejudices and begin to put into practice the oneness of mankind in our hearts, in our heads, and in our action. I wanted to begin with that quotation just because of the signs of our times, because also I want to just give you a little bit more about context. We talked about the context of us being here, first time since the pandemic, at the same time as the G7 are meeting and talking about themselves, and at the same time as there is so much suffering. Context is vitally important if we are going to be able to read aright the signs of the times. You know, dear Brit mentioned my book called The Woman Who Read Too Much. I one time had a meeting with a guy who said to me, he was a journalist, he said, "Oh yes, you're the woman who wrote that book called The Woman Who Talked Too Much. So please forgive me if that's what I'm going to do. But we do need to understand the fundamentals of reading, and to do that, we need context. And so in this first introductory discussion with you, I want to give you also a little bit of context. We will begin with this famous little book that you've been given, thanks to our beloved, is he here? Treasurer of the, is he the treasurer? He's translating. So there he is translating. Dear Behnam, thanks to him and his efforts, you have this book in your hands. In this book, you will see there is a table of contents. So I hope you will not get lost. This is your map, okay? We will follow this map. But don't trust me, because sometimes I will do a bit of jumping around, okay? A little bit. But if you have the map, you will be able to follow me. On the first page, you will see there is a picture. In this picture, you probably cannot read the titles of those books, but those books were the reason for why I started these lectures. And I want to give you a little bit of that context so we understand why we can continue with this course. In 2004, 5, 6, the National Assembly of Italy and the Continental Board of Councillors for Europe invited my dear father and mum to come to Acuto. And there my father gave a series of very interesting lectures on the world order of Baha'u'llah and Shoghi Effendi in particular. His writings, his plans, and his role in the administrative order. His role particularly in the line of succession from Baha'u'llah. And so, along with his very important talks, which were really deep, which were embedded in the knowledge of the faith which he had, in which he was speaking really about the succession, the guardianship, the universal house of justice, the need for the youth to understand these things so that they can become defenders of the cause. In the middle of all of this, just as a light sideshow to keep people amused, I was invited to kind of give a song and dance routine, which was about the writings of Shoghi Effendi. So what you are going to hear is just my tiny little song and dance routine, and you have to imagine or learn more. If you want to, you can even order the books. They're available through the Publishing Trust of Italy. They are in English, but they're very, very full of information. There are 3 books, as I've mentioned on page 2 here. There's one which is called Towards World Order. The next one is called Author of Teaching Plans, Shoghi Effendi, the author of teaching plans. And the third one is about Shoghi Effendi's range and power of his pen, where my father talked about the writings. On page 3, if you just take a look at that page, you will understand what did Shoghi Effendi achieve. So when we are looking at one sentence, I want you to realize it's the tip of the iceberg of everything that he wrote. Just to summarize, how many things he wrote? 11,345 items in English, 12,308 items in Persian and Arabic, and 452 cables. Imagine that total. 24,102 items that Shoghi Effendi wrote. Now, the word item covers everything. It includes a cable, a footnote or postscript written on his behalf in a letter, and the Dawnbreakers, God Passes By, the Advent of Divine Justice, all these major world order letters, the promised day is come, prayers and meditations that he translated, gleanings, the epistle to the sun. It's an ocean which he wrote. And we are going to look at one or two sentences. Okay? The importance of this vision of Shoghi Effendi and his writings, I will take just 2 minutes to make a small digression, which was something my dear father always began his talks with in Akuto, because he gave these talks over 5 years. He always began with something which nobody expected, and it became such a joke in our family with me and my daughter. We used to look at each other and say, paragraph 42? Now, what is that? Paragraph, do you remember? You've forgotten. Paragraph 42 of the Kitab al-Aqdas. That's how he always began. Now, what is in paragraph 42 of the Kitab al-Aqdas? You look at it and you will see it's about endowments. You say, what has this got to do with Shoghi Effendi or the writings of Shoghi? Why am I talking about endowments here? But if you look closely, if you read aright, you will see that this little paragraph, 42, in the Kitab al-Aqdas, which is hiding behind the notion of endowments, is telling us everything about, number one, the history of the faith, number two, the line of succession in the faith, number three, the guardianship, the house of justice, everything. It's all in that paragraph. I will read a little part of it to you. Here it begins. Endowments. Page 35 of the Kitab al-Aqdas. Endowments dedicated to charity. Revert to, that means go back to, return to, God, the revealer of signs. None hath the right to dispose of them. We have no right to use them, spend them, do anything with those special endowments, those special donations, those special contributions to charity, to the endowments, which includes also, I think, the Huququllah, without leave, without permission from him who is the dawning place of revelation. Him who is the dawning place of revelation. He doesn't say without leave from Baha'u'llah. He doesn't say without leave from me. But that's what he's saying. Him who is the dawning place of revelation is the manifestation of God. You cannot use, you cannot dispense, you cannot spend the money, the charities endowed to the faith without permission from Baha'u'llah. Then listen to what he says after that. After him. That means when he is no longer with us, when the ocean of his presence has been removed, when he has passed away. After him, this authority shall pass to the Aqsan. Not one Ghusn, but more than one. Aqsan is plural. When you know what your history of the faith is, Baha'u'llah passed away, and we know that he appointed Abdul Baha. Abdul Baha passed away, and he appointed Shoghi Effendi. Are two Ghusn. The Aqsan is two. First, you give your endowments to Baha'u'llah. After him, this authority shall pass to the Aqsan. And after them, to the house of justice, should it be established in the world at that time. by then. Sorry, I misquoted. Should it be established in the world by then? First, Baha'u'llah has the authority to receive that money. After him, the Aqsan, Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi. And after them, to the House of Justice, should it be established in the world by then? Well, it wasn't, was it? Shoghi Effendi passed away in 1957. No House of Justice had yet been established. Listen to what Baha'u'llah, in paragraph 42, already envisages. Otherwise, the endowments shall revert to the people of Baha who speak not except by his leave and judge not save in accordance with that which God hath decreed in his tablets. Lo, they are the champions of victory between earth and heaven, between heaven and earth. The people of Baha who speak not except by his leave and who judge not. That means they don't have the authority of legislation. Who judge not, save in accordance with what God hath decreed in this tablet. Lo, they are the champions of victory. Who were the champions of victory that took us from 1957 to the culmination of the 10-year plan of Shoghi Effendi? The hands of the cause. Do you see how in paragraph 42, Baha'u'llah prophesies the possibilities? First, Baha'u'llah receives the endowments, then the Aqsan, after them the House of Justice, if it has been established by then, otherwise the hands of the cause. In that line of succession, you get the significance there of the writings of Shoghi Effendi, because he is in that line of interpretation. He's directly linking us in our understanding of even the paragraph 42 that we have in front of us. I wanted to just add that because it was the context in which this whole course was developed. We were really learning to read the writings of Shoghi Effendi, to understand his plans, and to finally realize how that line of succession arrives at the House of Justice, so that we could follow the plans of the House of Justice. The whole idea was to bring us back to the present, from the past to the present. And so what I hope we can do today is also, and to the next few days, is also when we read the writings together, we are doing two things. We're applying the context of the present, the world we live in, and we are also remembering that we have just embarked, the most important coincidence of our summer school this year, we have just embarked on the new 9-year plan of the Universal House of Justice. So we could apply what we're learning to how we implement that plan. That's the ideal. To have the zeal, the joy, the engagement, the conviction that this plan will help us arrive at that wonderful statement that he said, that I read at the beginning, of the grasp of the oneness of mankind. That is the core message of the faith. And every one of the plans, both of Shoghi Effendi and the House of Justice, have been impelling us towards the implementation of that vision of Baha'u'llah. Shoghi Effendi calls it the supreme teaching of Baha'u'llah, the oneness of humanity. I will be going through this book, but not reading it word for word. I wanted to have it on the page so you could also follow it in your spare time if you're not completely tired. But on that third page, I have summed up all the things that Shoghi Effendi managed to write in the short 36 years of his ministry. Look at the range of writings that he had. And the sentences that we will be studying will come from that range. Some of them are analyses of the conditions of the world, explanations of the verities of the faith, commentaries on past and present history, expositions of the future Baha'i civilization, instructions on Baha'i administration, response to specific questions, warnings, cautionary advice, exhortations, and appeals. So much for the context for how this whole story began. I now want to go, if you turn to the next page, you will see I've written something called a brief chronology. And in the course of the next 3 days, I would like to encourage you, as you read each sentence with me and later in the afternoon in the workshops, you consult this chronology to see where did this sentence come from and when was it written. Because it helps you put it in the framework of the whole picture of Shoghi Effendi's writings. I have tried to sum it up. I won't bore you with it now, but take a look at those dates. See when it was he was writing the Advent, when he was writing the World Order letters. Do you see the ones, the 1929? I should have added to 1931 because that letter that I just quoted to you came from 31. That was when those World Order letters were written. For example, in 1944, if you take a look on the second page, I think it is, that was the year when he completed God Passes By. All right? We will be reading letters from God, we will be reading sentences from God Passes By. So you will double check your chronology, okay? Because it's very helpful to put it in the context of time. And so that's really, I don't want to bore you with it, but I want to give you that idea that when we read, check your chronology and double check it. Now, in the first 2 days of the sentences I've given you, I've also included another page, and you have to jump a little bit. It's on page 12 in the first one, and it's on page 12 and page, hang on a minute, page 22 on the second one. I've also given you in this book a list of words. I've called them definitions 1 and 2. Page 12 and page 22, you'll see a list of words. And dear Behnam has kindly translated this into Norwegian too. So this should help you understand. This is just an example of the kind of homework that we're all going to be doing. As we read the sentences, we should make our own definitions. If you come to a word you don't understand, check it out. Go to God Google, see what it means, and write your definition in Norwegian. Because you need to keep a clear idea of the meaning of some of Shoghi Effendi's words. I did not put these in the right order. I looked afterwards and I saw that the one on page 22 should have been put later. It doesn't matter. They're not in the right order for the book, but they are an example to you and a kind of a way that you can also keep track of the meaning of the words. I think I've spoken enough about that general context. And I think I have how much time for the first session? It's now 10 past. It's 45 minutes altogether. So I should stop at past? Oh, I've got until 11. But you've already been sitting so patiently for so long. Aren't you tired? No? 11, really? In that case, are you ready to go? Okay. We're going to begin to read. And here again, I'm going to do a jump. I'm not going to do the one on page 9 first. I'm going to do the one on page 10. And I was inspired to do this as I was listening to your beautiful Norwegian prayers. I said, I must start with this sentence. Now, here is a sentence. As you can see, it comes from Promised Days Come. And we will first read the top part where I haven't played around with the words, okay? We will just read it in a simple little paragraph so you can follow it like good children sitting in a class. By the way, do any of you remember when you first learned how to read? You were about what, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6? Do you remember the feeling you had when you and said the first word, and then you said the second word, and then you said the third, and you remembered that the first word was that, the second word was that, and you suddenly understood the sentence? Do you remember that feeling? It's a very passionate feeling if you can try to dredge it up. You read one word, you say it, and then you have to kind of remember it, and then you go to the next word, and then you suddenly realize, oh, the cat sat on the mat. It all goes together. That is the feeling I want you to have as we read together. We are going to bump up against every single word. We're going to first read the whole thing, and then we're going to go back and go word for word in order to recreate that sense of discovery that you have when you learn to read as a child. And that will also help us understand the meaning of the sentence. So I'm going to quickly read the first sentence the way we usually try to read, okay? The way we usually think is a good way to read. Mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly, God accomplishes his design. Though the sight that meets our eyes in this day be the spectacle of a world hopelessly entangled in its own meshes, utterly careless of the voice which for a century has been calling it to God, and miserably subservient to the siren voices which are attempting to lure it into the vast abyss. Right? That's how it feels, right? Now, first thing you do, you ask yourself, are there words I don't understand? What is meshes? I think I included meshes in page 22. You can check it out. What is entangled? You've got your Norwegian translation. Why am I asking you? But you see what I'm saying? There are first the words you have to understand, and you ask yourself, you check them out, and you begin to put them in the right place. But the second most important thing is, what on earth is he saying? What is this? I got completely lost. Siren voices? I'm going to read it again now on the basis of this extraordinary pattern of words that I've put out in this strange formatting, which dear Bernard thought was a mistake, right? And he was, what the heck have I got to do here? I've got to reorganize all these words. I specially wrote it like this, as you will see, for a reason. We begin with these 3 adverbs. Adverbs are words that tell you how a verb is said. So she is speaking slowly, right? She is speaking mysteriously. Now, when you say those 3 words, actually, the first time I read it, I thought, Shoghi Effendi's got this wrong. He shouldn't have said mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly. He should have said slowly, mysteriously, and resistlessly. Why? Because I thought, profound reader that I am, Shoghi Effendi should surely have begun with 2 syllables, slowly, bom, bom, mysteriously, 3 syllables, resistlessly, 4 syllables. So 2, 3, 4. Sounds nice, right? Da 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 da. We can even say it as a dance, slowly, resistlessly, right? But in fact, he doesn't do that. He's forcing us to say them in a very different order. And there's a reason for that. When you begin again, mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly, what happens? First of all, your slowly has to be slow. You can't say mysteriously, slowly, and resistless. You can't. You have to say mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly. Now, when you hear that resistlessly, what do you hear? A drum? I hope you hear a drum. Resistlessly. It's a fabulous drum, right? Tra-dum, chum, chum. There's a wonderful poem by a 17th century poet called Henry King. And he wrote a poem when his wife died. And he was lamenting, he was sorrowing, he was missing her. And he was telling her, I'm going to come after you. I'm going to join you. I don't want to stay here alone. And there are these lines in his poem, which I will try to quote for you. Hark, which is the word in Old English for listen. Hark, my pulse like a soft drum beats my approach, tells thee I come. And think not much of my delay. I am already on my way. Language is full of music. We're going to begin today just mentioning the music in the language of Shoghi Effendi. And I hope on the last morning that we say goodbye to each other, when I will speak again about the music of Shoghi Effendi, we will end with a beautiful piece of music which our dear Lasse has composed, which I'm sure you all know, dedicated to Shoghi Effendi. The music of his language, which I heard in your magnificent Norwegian prayers this morning, the music of Baha'u'llah. It's there in all languages. But the music of Shoghi Effendi, we usually don't listen to because we get lost in the grammar. We get confused by the length of the sentences and we don't know where they're going. But it's full of music. Mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly. Okay, so he's telling us how, right? Those are adverbs. They're words that tell us how something happens. It is happening slowly, it is happening resistlessly, and in the very beginning, he forces us to begin with a mystery. He's giving us how, but he's at the same time telling us, you won't understand how. He's very tricky, Shoghi Effendi. You think you've got the idea, I can do this. And then you suddenly realize he's tricking you. He's making you say an adverb, which is an adverb of manner, which is a how does something happen word. And at the same time, the very first one that's coming out of your mouth is an admission that you actually don't know how. Mysteriously. So what is it that is happening mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly? Now we come to the spine of the sentence. Every sentence in every language has a spine. And hanging off the spine are your arms and your legs, and your organs are sort of adjusting in the middle there. But if you don't have a spine, you don't have sense. You don't have meaning. Everything else hooks on, hangs on to the spine. And in my way of understanding, in my old-fashioned school, it was called the main sentence, that spine. And the first task for any reader of Shoghi Effendi is to look for the main sentence. What is the main sentence? In all this plethora of words, where is the main sentence? Where is the spine sentence? And we come to it straight away. Mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly, God accomplishes his design. God accomplishes his design. That is the main sentence. Everything else, even the mysteriously, is hooked on to that. And in a main sentence, you have to have a subject, In this case, it's God. You have to have a verb. In this case, it's accomplishes. And if it's a simple sentence, which is what this is, you need an object. His design. In actual fact, the word his is only a little hook onto the word design, isn't it? It's telling you whose design. So the main sentence, God accomplishes his design. God accomplishes his design. Do you hear the rhythm there? Dum, da, dum, da, dum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. In music, you've got the drone bass that keeps beating at the bottom of the music that goes all over the place. But if you lose sight of that rhythm, boom, 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 you can't understand the rest of it. What I used to do with the students in Akuto was we'd say, okay, everybody on this side of the room is going to be God accomplishes his design, and everybody else is going to be the siren voices. We'll get to those in a minute. So you start, God accomplishes his design. God accomplishes his design. You keep going. God accomplishes his design. God accomplishes his design. Meanwhile, we're going to say, though the sight that meets our eyes in this day be a spectacle of the world, hopelessly entangled in its own measures, utterly careless of the voice which for a century has been calling it to God, and miserably subservient. Do you hear it? It never stops. It never stops. And you have to hear that pulse all through that sentence. Because while we are reading and trying to understand the second half of the sentence, we must never forget that God accomplishes his design. And he does it mysteriously, slowly, and resistlessly. Now, what is the rest of this sentence? What on earth is Shoghi Effendi saying in though? Now, of course, the word though is although, right? While all this is happening, God is accomplishing his design. Meanwhile, do you remember those old cowboy stories, films? Meanwhile, at the ranch, right? So you've got the cowboys are going off to chase the bandits. Meanwhile, at the ranch, you've got the wife cooking something, and one of the bandits is creeping up behind, right? So there's always that meanwhile at. So this is though the sight that meets our eyes in this day. Now that's a very important word there, sight. And I want you to hang on to that sight, because the rest of the sentence is about sound. This is a sentence which is contrasting sight and sound, what you see and what you hear. You sometimes don't hear it because it's so soft, it's so mysterious, it's a whisper. God accomplishes his design. But what we're seeing is very spectacular. The sight that meets our eyes in this day be a spectacle. A spectacle is a, pantomime. It's a show. It's a soap opera. It's a spectacle. It's a circus. A spectacle of a world hopelessly entangled in its own meshes, utterly careless of the voice which for a century has been calling it to God, and miserably subservient to the siren voices which are attempting to lure it into the vast abyss. The way that sentence ends, if you really try to understand it the first time, you just get so lost that you go into the vast abyss. You don't know where you're going. Siren voices? What? Meshes, hopelessly entangled. Though the sight that meets our eyes in this day be the spectacle. A spectacle is also an empty show. It's a theatrical display. It's not the real thing. He uses that word specially to remind us that this is just an illusion. The sight that meets our eyes in this day is a fiction. It's fake. It's not the true thing. So the sight that meets our eyes is of a world, and don't we know it? Hopelessly entangled in its own meshes. We can't get out of this situation. We don't know what is going to solve the problems in the Ukraine. What is it going to take for the nations of the world to realize the catastrophe that has happened environmentally? How are we ever going to get a glimpse of the importance of remembering Africa in all of this and 500 years of slavery and colonization and exploitation? What? Are we even thinking of that as being a consequence of where we are today? Most of the time, not. We are so hopelessly entangled in our own measures, we only think as far as Europe, Northern Europe. We can barely get across the Mediterranean. We let them die in the water because we don't think that far. We're so hopelessly entangled in our own meshes, utterly careless of the voice, God accomplishes his design, which has been calling us for a century to God. And ultimately, because we are entangled, because we are careless, there is a consequence. There is a result. The result is that we are miserably subservient. Do you know what that word subservient means? We become enslaved. This is the true slavery, if you look at your Norwegian translation. Miserably subservient to the siren voices. Do you notice how Shoghi Effendi uses S's? Subservient, siren voices. It's really fascinating the way Shoghi Effendi uses all the powers of words. And in this one, it's like not only siren voices, you know, the beautiful maidens that comb their hair on the sea and, la, come here, I will drown you. Not that only, but we've got somehow with those images of entanglement and the meshes, which are the nets, which unfortunately, when I shut my eyes, I remember the story that we were talking about in the Cardia Brit about the poor whale that you had his stomach filled with plastic, for God's sake, hopelessly we are the ones that are filled with plastic. We're hopelessly entangled with the whale, I think. Even worse than the whale, because at least the whale manages to die. We keep going from day to day, hopelessly entangled, right? Where am I going? I've lost track of where I'm going. Do you see what happens with these things? So the siren voices, all those S's, are an echo of archetypal metaphors. Serpents, snakes. And Shoghi Effendi literally, and it's a pity it doesn't all fit on one page, because when you have that sentence all on one page, you see it sort of goes miserably, mysteriously, slowly, resistlessly. You see the main sentence, God accomplishes his design. And then the rest of the sentence just goes. If you put it all on one page, you will actually see how the siren voices are luring us to the vast abyss at the bottom of the page. I wanted to begin with that so that you would get a sense, first of all, of the importance of the main sentence, and secondly, just to give you a taste of the power of Shoghi Effendi, to realize that when you become a reader of our true brother, he's inviting you into a drama. He's inviting you into the most exciting experience that you have physically with the language. You must feel, language is a very physical thing. We're using our mouths, we're using our tongue, we're using our teeth, our palate. We're also using the diaphragm, our lungs. If you don't have enough breath to get to the siren voices, right? You need your whole body to be able to read Shoghi Effendi. This is not just from up here, friends. We tend to read Shoghi Effendi from up here. No. We have to use our whole bodies and God accomplishes his design. That's the pulse. That's the pulse of the sentence, which is the main clause, the main sentence of every sentence. I wanted you to get that taste of the drama, of the theatre, of the power of Shoghi Effendi's writings, so that you won't feel frightened by them. Because it's very daunting, isn't it, to have this long sentence in front of you. You think, oh God, how do I go for this? Da-da, da-da. I'm going to get to the end. Right, take a deep breath and you start. Now we'll go to the first sentence that I put here. And this is an example of what I'm talking about. This sentence, of course, comes from, where did I put it? The world order. This is, in fact, just before that other sentence, lamentably defective, that I read at the beginning of this morning. Lamentably defective to read aright. So this sentence comes just before that. And there is a corollary sentence that goes along with it, which when you go back to your studies, you can find it. Two sentences that begin, all we can. But this is the first one. And I find this a powerful sentence because it's not so easy to find the main clause. And it really is a sentence which takes you for a ride. Yes. Do you know where I am? Page 9. Page 9. We're on page 9 together, the sentence before the mysteriously one. Are you all right? Do you need to get up and move, breathe? Are you lost? I hope I'm not disappointing you with all this nonsense. I'm not a proper good Baha'i speaker who gives you all kinds of solid information about the plans of God and so forth. Please excuse me. I just love the language of Shoghi Effendi. That's all. And I want to share that with you if it's possible, so that we can then go to the plans and we can implement them with that joy and that excitement which only Shoghi Effendi gives us. You know, he was with us 36 years. So short. But his dispensation lasts for the whole period of Baha'u'llah. This is very important for us to remember. That's why the letter he writes in 1931 is as relevant for us today as it will be in 50 years' time. These letters, these words, these sentences of Shoghi Effendi will carry us through the whole dispensation of Baha'u'llah. And so we'd better learn how to read them. We'd better not waste any more time. How many years has it been since our beloved guardian passed away? 1957 until 2022. Who's good at maths? Come on, you Norwegian mathematicians. Can't you figure it out? I should have figured it out, but I can't. 65. 65 years. During those 65 years, have we really read Shoghi Effendi? I'm sure some of us have. I'm sure some of us have. But it's time more of us do. It's time we read them in relation to what we're doing today. Now, in this sentence, which I will read again from the top so that you can not get lost on the page, it begins with a wonderful word, all. All. Do you notice what happens to our mouths when we say, thank you? It's got to be just big enough for your finger. Can you do it? All. It's a wonderful word, huh? It's such a small word, but it tells you everything. All. I've noticed, because I've been living in France, that there are certain words that don't exist in different languages. And I learnt yesterday on the way up that you have a word in Norwegian which exists in the good old Anglo-Saxon, because I'm sure it was the Vikings that brought that word to English. And it's the word that begins with A, and then there's W, and then there's E. And it's the word all. It means wonder, terror, amazement, fear. It's the feeling you have when you look up at the stars, when you look out there and you see that view. It makes you aware of how little you are and the immensity of the universe. How small your understanding and how enormous the wealth of knowledge that you will never, 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 never know. It's a magnificent word. It doesn't exist in French, of course. The Cartesians will never admit to awe. They have the word crainte, which means fear, but it doesn't have wonder in it. It doesn't have amazement in it. It doesn't have a sense of, oh, how small I am and how great you are. My powerlessness and thy might, my poverty and thy wealth. It doesn't contain that. It's a shriveled little word for, ooh, I'm a little bit frightened, which is not at all the same, right? Oh, that word all brings an echo of awe. Do you notice the difference? Is those two L's, right? The word all closes, whereas awe never ends. It goes on and on and on to the ends of the universe and beyond. But our little word all is all right to start with, right? All. Well, I don't mind knowing all about the writings of Shoghi Effendi. I can tell you all about the Baha'i faith. I know all about it. It's a very grand word, right? It makes you feel, I know something, I can do something, I've got it all, I want it all, give it to me, I need it all. There's possession in it, right? We begin with that word. And notice what Shoghi Effendi then does to us. All we can reasonably, you say, what? All is not reasonable. I don't want all in a reasonable way, I want it all. But Shoghi Effendi doesn't let you say that. All, he says, we can reasonably. Oh, okay, so I have to be reasonable, I have to use my rationality. That takes a step back. I was going to jump off the edge of here. I was going to give you all a hug, all. But no, I have to be reasonable. Okay, I go back. All we can reasonably, then he tells you another word. All we can reasonably venture. What an interesting word that is. What's the Norwegian for venture? Have you got it in your Can somebody say it? Say it again. Våge. Våge. Oh, hope is not the same. No. Hope is not the same. Venture, if you look at the word venture, it's the end of the word adventure, right? An adventure is, we're going off for an adventure. We don't know where we're going. We have no idea where it's going to take us, but it's an adventure. We're excited. Now, the word ad in Latin, of course, means towards. Adventure. You're going towards a venture. Now, the word venture is a very risky word because with a venture, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. Sometimes your venture arrives at its conclusion, but sometimes it's a catastrophe. You never know whether a venture will be a successful venture or a failed venture. It's open. All, you think, I'm going to do it all. We can reasonably, you step back, we can reasonably venture? You have to step back again because there's no certainty. There's no absolute sureness. A venture is risky. Venture, you're beginning to lose your footing. All we can reasonably venture. And then the next word, okay, I'm happy with venture because it reminds me of an adventure. I think I'm a hero. I'm going to have a grand venture. And then the next words are to attempt. Oh, come on, Shoghi Effendi. What are you doing to me? I want more than an attempt. I want a success. I don't want just what's an attempt? It's a try. Gosh, that's a weak word, isn't it? I just attempting to. It's really, you think you're going to do it all, and then you have to be reasonable, okay? Then you have to make it a venture, okay? Then you have to attempt all we can reasonably venture to attempt. You thought you were going to climb the mountains, right? Your feet are slipping with every step. Just as you think you're going up, you're sliding down again. All we can reasonably venture to attempt is to, okay, now you've come to a very important word, is. All we can do is something. Do you hear this main sentence? You may not hear the main sentence, but do you find the verb? All I've done is get you to this point. All I've said until now is rubbish. All the waits I had at Frankfurt Airport to get to you are worthwhile now I've seen your faces. All we can reasonably venture to attempt is to do something. So that is pivotal. It's the pulse of your main sentence. And if you shrink all the other words, you'll see that what he's saying is, all we can do is something, right? That's your main sentence. All we can do is. Now, what does he say all we can do? He says to strive. I put it in capital letters because it's such a grand word. See what happens to your mouth when you say strive? You have to really be a frog. Strive. Don't be afraid and embarrassed by language. Shoghi Effendi's here to humiliate you. All we can reasonably venture to attempt is to strive. Oh, how grand that is. I want to strive, because next to the word strive is the word arrive, right? I want to strive to arrive to say all. That's what you think you're going to do. I want to strive because it looks heroic and noble. I can show my muscles. I'm a hero. I'm going to strive against all odds. But what does he let you do? He strive to obtain a glimpse. It's wonderful, isn't it? And you think you're going to get everything out there. Oh, yes, I'm going to arrive. But no, you're striving to obtain a glimpse. One of the wonderful things about English, and I was mentioning this to our dear friends when we were talking about gl. There are many words in English which begin with gl. I'd love to know if there's a Norwegian equivalent. And they all have to do with light or with seeing. Gleam, glimmer, glance, gloom. I'm sure that there is some kind of Viking root to those words, or definitely a Saxon root, because they're not Latin, which is the other side of English, the words which have a Latin root. Gl is not. You can always tell Saxon words in English because they're monosyllabic, like mud, blood, right? They're very... And the word gleam, glum, gloom, monosyllabic. Glimmer gives you a little shimmer of light, glimmering. Gleam. These are all words which give you a little bit of something. And here is a glimpse. Now, a glimpse is one of those moments where now you see it, now you don't. Wait a minute, I caught a glimpse of someone. I can't see the person anymore. A glimpse comes and goes. It's very uncertain. So all we can reasonably venture to attempt is to strive to obtain what? To obtain where did it go? I thought I saw it. It's gone. Oh, there it is. No. Oh, it was over there. A glimpse, a tiny flicker of something. So uncertain, so fragile, so precarious, so delicate. That's all we can reasonably venture to attempt, is to strive to obtain a glimpse. Okay, I'll take my glimpse. A glimpse of all the revelation of Baha'u'llah, right? A glimpse of the golden age and peace on earth. A glimpse of the oneness of mankind. But this is a glimpse of the first streaks. It's not even the whole thing. It's the first streaks. Come on. It's not even... You want the sun, right? We have been climbing one of your mountains. Remember this. This sentence is a Norwegian sentence. It is definitely taking us up there to the very summit where we can see the world. But we've been walking backwards a little bit, but we keep on striving because we want to obtain even a glimpse of the first streaks. And what are the first streaks of? The promised dawn. In other words, the sun hasn't even risen yet. It's not even there yet. It's not even the sunrise, it's the dawn. And not only the dawn, but the first streaks of the promised dawn. You didn't realize it took so much energy, did you? All we can reasonably venture to attempt is to strive to obtain a glimpse of the first streaks of the promised dawn. Now, what does he do there? He gives you a marvelous word, which is part of the subordinate clause which has come after our main sentence. We can reasonably, is to do something, something, something. This is the verb of that do something, something, something clause. It's the first streaks of the promised dawn, which must, absolute assurance, it must. Now, you think, okay, it must dawn, right? It must come. It must achieve itself. But no, he makes you have a comma, which must, in the fullness of time. He interrupts you. He doesn't even let you get to what must happen at the top of the summit of that mountain. He stops you in the fullness of time. Now, the words fullness of time, just between you and me, is a Victorian cliche. It's what was very often used in Victorian English to mean, to sort of avoid saying when it was going to happen. Oh, it will happen in the fullness of time, right? And you think, how could Shoghi Effendi use a cliche? Come on, he's better than that. He can do better than that. What is he doing with it? He's taking a worn-out cliche from Victorian English, usually used hypocritically to say nothing, and he's putting it right bang after that powerful verb must, in the fullness of time. I challenge any one of you reading that sentence or listening to it with your eyes shut. When you come to those words, in the fullness of time, what do you see? In the fullness of time, you see the whole sun. You see the whole spherical brightness of this orb that you've been catching a glimpse of and trying to reach and falling backwards. Suddenly that cliche comes alive because of where he puts it. Because right up there where you almost are at the summit of the mountain, that's where you see the dawn and the sunrise. That's where you envisage the rising sun of that day. And he gives it to you in those words, the fullness of time. You get the full richness and juice of that ripe sun rising, which must, in the fullness of time, now look at the rest. Chase away the gloom that has encircled humanity. You're at the top of the mountain, and it's all easy from here. You see from here. You understand that these were siren voices. You grasp that that gloom will be chased away in the fullness of time, and the fullness of time has just about arrived. I'll give you a 5-minute break. See you later.